Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leon Wiebers, and I'm a professor at Loyola Marymount University. I teach costume design, and welcome to another episode of Drinks and Dress. Um, this is Costume Society of America's series, Conversations on Dress. Should you have any general questions regarding CSA's digital content, please contact Conversations on Dress at costumesocietyamerica.com. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce our guest today and the collection that we have to share with you. Kelly Richardson is the curator and director and former assistant curator of the Elizabeth Sage Historic Costume Collection in the Eskenazi School of Art, Architecture, and Design. She has a BA in art history from Arizona State and an MA in historic and cultural aspects of clothing and textiles from Oregon State University. Before relocating to Indiana, Kelly was a costume fellow at the Oregon Historical Society in Portland for 2 years. And in 2021, along with Galena Olmsted, Kelly curated The Art of the Character, highlights from the Glenn Close costume collection at the Eskenazi Museum of Art. Kelly guest curated Illustrating Identity, Senior Chords in the Monroe County, currently on view at the Monroe County Historical Center. Other exhibitions include The Illustrated Woman, Fashion Images and Culture at the Sage Collection, Ubiquity, Fashion, Design, Culture, Halston, Line and Legacy, and The Eye of the Beholder, Fashion Silhouettes and Label and Ideals of Beauty. While at the Sage Collection, she's worked to integrate Sage Collection objects into the classroom across campus and directed several large collection moves and rehousing projects. With that, please welcome Kelly Richardson. Hi, Kelly. How are you? And welcome to D&D.
I'm well. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm really excited to be able to share some gems of our collection tonight.
Excellent. And by the way, our drink for this evening is the Sage Couture for those out there. And the non-alcoholic drink is the Salted Sage Lemonade. The recipe will be posted in the chat. Kelly, tell us a little bit about the collection and yourself, and then we'll just dive right in.
Sure. So the Sage Collection is we like to call it and I'll have some slides about this whole social history collection at Indiana University. It's named for Elizabeth Sage, who was the first professor of clothing and textiles here at IU. It's a large collection, about 28,000 pieces.
Wow.
For the lack of a better word, it's kind of an American and Western fashion collection, meaning we don't collect domestic flat or domestic textiles, no quilts, coverlets, samplers, etc. Nor do we collect I would call sort of national folk or ethnic costume, although we certainly have pieces in our collection inspired by those kinds of dress. We just have a great anthropology museum here on campus as well, and as people who work with collections know, there's only so much space, and what we need not to do is duplicate each other's collecting efforts. Yeah, and for your introduction, grew up in the West, always loved fashion, thought I wanted to be a designer, discovered that was probably not my strong skill set, and pivoted to art history and just loved sitting in the dark looking at images of dressed people, and came to it that way. And I, after graduation, I worked in the community arts center and began volunteering with Jean Hildreth at the Phoenix Art Museum. Really, my job was with a couple of other people just changing out tissue paper. And that was a great way to see part of that collection. And I found out, soon that I needed to go back to school to do what she did, and moved to Corvallis and went to Oregon State University, worked in Portland for a couple of years, as I told you, and then came to IU and have been here for a long time.
That's fantastic. Actually, I got a very similar start at UW, working at the Henry Art Gallery, because they have such a fantastic collection, and as my work study, and I rolled saris and rehoused saris for an entire semester because they have such an amazing collection of historic saris.
Yeah, it's a good start, isn't it?
It is. It's great. So excellent. So let's dive in. What have you got to share with us today?
Okay. All right. So I want to start with a land acknowledgement. We wish to acknowledge and honor the Miami, Delaware, Potawatomi, and Shawnee people on whose ancestral homelands and resources Indiana University Bloomington is built. So first of all, there's that image of Elizabeth Sage. So she was the first professor of clothing and textiles here at IU. She was a native of Buffalo, New York, and she came to IU in 1913, was the second professor hired in the newly created Department of Home Economics. And while she brought with her some family pieces and things that she had collected, and then during her summers off from teaching, so we traveled around the world collecting bits of textiles, costumes, fashion plates, books, etc. Brought them back to campus, squirreled them away in cabinets and closets, and would bring them out when she wanted to illustrate certain techniques, items of dress, textiles, etc. I think essentially how every sort of college university collection began. She authored one of the first costume history textbooks, which you see here in 1926, and followed that up with a book on entitled Textiles and Clothing in 1930. And then she retired in 1937. I just found this great image on archives about this home ec class from 1937. So upon her retirement, she donated her group of samples to the school, and the collection was officially named and created at that time, although collecting for it had been going on since at least 1913 or earlier. So it is a long-lived collection here at
Wow,
IU.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Just found this fun. So exhibition has been part of the program here at IU. The stage collection, even though we don't have our own gallery, I just found this old image of 19th century cottons from 1946, which was very fun. I hadn't seen that image before, delving into our university archives. So it really is, we consider a social history collection. You'll see some really wonderful examples of couture, designer pieces, as well as costume, which has become a part of our collection. But we, I feel like a lot of people too, we really, get excited by the everyday, those house dresses, the worn and torn items, the jeans and the tennis shoes that also really gets us excited. We are not a museum. We're a special collection within the Eskenazi School of Art, Architecture, and Design in the College of Arts and Sciences at Indiana University. So there's not a lot of, museum-like infrastructure. We're really sort of it. We have a permanent collection, which is what I'll be highlighting today. We also have a study collection that's kept next to classrooms in the same building that the studios are, that, our fashion design professors can open up a Saint Laurent facing, you know what I mean? And they can get in there and dig in and look at those pieces. But I'm going to be talking about the permanent collection today. And that's
So
just
fantastic. That's so fantastic that you have a study collection as well as the permanent collection. That's a really rare thing for universities to have, I think.
Yeah, we're very lucky. They're used very differently, but it is. Students are fortunate here, I believe. All right, let's see. I'm going to say this is just a little bit about our mission. So we have the stated priorities of American design and Indiana University related objects. Although you see, we have a great European design collection too, as it serves to sort of highlight in contrast to the American design. And we sort of have a stated objective of exhibition, research, and preservation. We do the research and preservation. Exhibition is just on a kind of collaborative basis, or, squat in other people's galleries and, install our own exhibits on a visiting basis.
A textile takeover is what you're telling me, is what I'm hearing here.
Kind of, yeah, exactly.
What is this image? Can you tell me about this garment that you have featured? It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a Vitali Babani gown from about 1918, I believe. It's really quite quite a lovely piece, and was donated, I think, by an Indianapolis, well-to-do Indianapolis woman
And it
to
has a
our
great
collection. So,
medieval vibe to it. It's
oh
fantastic.
yeah, it is really. It's one of the treasures of our collection. It's been on exhibit at least once, but yeah, it's quite lovely. So with that stated mission, talking about Indiana University and for the state of Indiana, I thought I'd just show a couple of uh, fun pieces here. We have on the left is a 1879 IU graduation gown worn by a woman. I think there was maybe 12 women the year that Ida Kinney, who wore this dress, graduated. Um, Next to that is a hiking ensemble worn by Clara Kinsey, the wife of Alfred Kinsey. Some of you may know that the Kinsey Institute is here at Indiana University, where he based his research out of, and they've got a wonderful collection. We do overlap a little bit in
Oh,
some
wow.
ways for clothing, very specific as you can imagine. But what I really love is that we have so Clara Kinsey, Alfred's wife, was a big outdoors woman and led hiking clubs and faculty groups around sort of the county on these hiking clubs for like 30, 40 years. And we have her hiking ensembles, which are very, you know, uh, worn and repaired and all kinds of different men's. And they're really some of my favorite items because I think we get kind of fetishistic about our objects, and I think we need to remember it's about the people, right? And I think that the stories behind the objects are the most important thing rather than the objects.
Well, I think the Kinseys would appreciate that fetishistic approach, let me just say.
Exactly.
Kelly, you set me up for that one. You really did.
Not rehearsed at all, right?
Not
um,
at all.
and
I had
then
no
next,
idea. That's so amazing. Now I seriously want to come and see your collection, Kelly. Like this is, I've obviously like I have read about the Kinseys and it's just amazing. I had no idea that they had all that you had actually some of their garments. That's fantastic.
oh yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with Claire Kinsey. I just think he was in such a spotlight for a while, and it's this like very small Midwestern college town. I always just think and the woman is always the sort of social face of the family, the community face. I think, God, what would that have been like being that person who was interacting? He was off doing his research, and she was the shield and the buffer to the rest of the community and the world. So,
Absolutely.
um, and next to that is a 1943, one of the only documented Rosie the Riveter ensembles worn by a woman who worked at a Republic aircraft plant in Evansville, Indiana for a few months in the summer of 1943. It's been on exhibit at the Smithsonian. So it's a very cool part of American history. And yeah, then next is the USO uniform. We have a great music school here at IU, and this was worn by Agnes Wells, who was a soprano. And a couple years before she came to IU, she toured with the USO for a couple of years, singing and performing for the troops in World War II. Let's see. And then next is another, I don't know, World War II connection that I just found. So we have a large collection, and anyone who works with collections knows, I mean, you discover stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And even if you've seen it before, knowing that you have the time to really dig in is something else, and you find new things about the piece. So this brown coat was worn by a woman named, it's purchased in Indianapolis at L. Strauss. She's worn by a woman named B. Langer, who she was Polish and a chemist, and she came with her husband, Lawrence Langer, to the U.S., and he was a physicist, and she ended up they moved to he was recruited to the Manhattan Project, and so she also worked on that in Los Alamos, and didn't know that and just found that digging out from archives. And so they were here in Bloomington for quite a while, and that was one of her pieces. um, let's see, and then dress on the right is another IU related gown. This was worn by Dorothy Starr, who was the wife of one of IU's presidents. His name was Elvis Starr. I mean, such a great name. You can't really make that up. And he was president from 1962 to 68. So she wore this at his inauguration as IU president, but she also wore it at the year prior to JFK's inaugural ball because her husband at that time was the Secretary of the Army. So just kind of some cool Indiana connections to different parts of history.
That's fantastic.
So I thought today I would just we could talk about, I was going to highlight these 4 parts of our collection. It's by default very 20th century heavy today, although we do have nice older pieces as well. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight the work with Bill Blass. So my mentor and former curator, Kate Rowald, spent, gosh, a couple years camped out in the Blass offices in New York, working on the only retrospective of the Couture designer's work to date, which resulted in a 2002 exhibition titled Bill Blass, an American Designer. So, and just want to acknowledge that she kind of changed our lives here because of her close work with Blass, who died a couple of months before the exhibit opened. He gave us a very generous gift that now funds student scholarships, a speaker series, student projects, etc. So that wouldn't have happened without Kate's really hard work on that subject. A lot of CSA people probably know Kate, who is now very happily retired.
Indeed. This is fantastic. I can't wait to see some of the things that you have from the Bill Blass. I mean, what an amazing designer, and that is sort of unsung in some ways in American fashion history.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say he wasn't the most like creative, groundbreaking, but he sold a lot of clothes and women really loved him. And he was one of the first to kind of become a personality himself, the 70s and 80s when people were hawking chocolates and cars and bed linens and, everything, everything under the sun.
Everything.
Yeah. So just kind of a funny story. So part of Kate's work with Bill meant that she got him to come to campus and talk to students. So people from Indiana are obsessed with other people from Indiana who go off and make it, into the world. And I had been here for just like a couple of weeks. Indiana used to be one of the only states that didn't do daylight savings time. So there was a little bit of a mix up when he flew in to Bloomington, and I was at our collection at that time, and everybody was due to come in like an hour. And like I said, I'd been there for just a couple weeks. And so all of a sudden he's there an hour early, storms in with his entourage. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And he wanted to see his things. So I got the rolling rack with his, his pieces. I'm there with my little white cotton gloves, and he's just tearing, looking at this, that old thing, this old thing. And it's like, baptism by fire. But it was a great experience. It was just, I thought thinking of these, pretty precious special pieces. And to him, they were just his old clothes,
He's like, oh, I haven't seen this one in a long time. This is fantastic.
Exactly. It was an experience. Just a couple of images from the exhibition. We actually don't have a lot of really great images. You think of 2002 we would, but we don't. But it had over 100 pieces, loans from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Indianapolis Museum of Art, archives, and some private clients. So yeah, it's he was born and raised in Fort Wayne, and remains kind of one of those, Hoosier touchstones, along with Halston and Stephen Sprouse and Norell.
Right. What a fantastic dress that is on the form in the front. That's amazing.
Yeah,
and then the dress in the background that is on the has the gold embroidery down the front. That looks just amazing. And then the sort of the coat, or maybe it's a dress on the middle form, the very sort of wide A-line coat.
Oh, yeah, I think it's like a black paper taffeta coat over a long narrow gown. I think it's sort of like, I don't know, Blass does his best Balenciaga or something.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Blass pieces because the Hoosier Indiana connection. And then, of course, since this exhibit um, uh, was on view, and that just connected us to a lot of,
Yeah.
Blass people. So we do have a really nice collection.
Is the dress in the front, is that like, it looks like it's a voided velvet.
Yeah, it's like a nice coupe de velour. It's
Oh,
really
right.
beautiful.
Oh, it's
Really
stunning. It's really beautiful.
quite
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Have to say that was a loan. We don't own that. Sorry. Then I thought I'd also talk to you about the Anne Bass collection. So, really kind of fortuitous. So, that name may be familiar to some people who were, I don't know, reading W in Vogue in the 80s and 90s. She was a socialite who was born and raised in Indianapolis, went to Vassar, and she married into the Bass family, a Texas oil family. So she married well, and then I think in 1965, and divorced even better in 1988, getting what was, I think, the highest divorce settlement in Texas to date. And so her sister lived in Bloomington and wound up becoming friends with a woman named Nelda Crist, who was the chair of the department at that time. And it, Anne would pass things on to her sister to wear, and then when her sister was done with it, she would pass them on to Nelda, and she would add them to the collection. And at some point, her sister became less interested in clothing, and the connection was made just between the two of them. So she's donated pieces to our collection. Gosh, in the late 70s, early 80s, up to her death in 2020. So
Wow. That's
a big,
amazing.
yeah, an haute couture patron has just really kind of brought the world of fashion to little Bloomington, Indiana, and benefited our students so much by being able to see some of these pieces firsthand. And I did a little, I don't know, little collection image of some designers and things that
Oh,
she
wow. These
has
are
given,
fantastic.
yeah, over time. So we're really very fortunate. So we have a kind of a look of her wardrobe, over, I would say, 40 years. So it's kind of interesting to see how she, the things that she dressed and how her taste changed over time as well. We have been working on a photography project for the last couple of years, trying to photograph these things. Anyone who works, you know what I mean, trying to document your collection. We're really lucky that she didn't really change very much over time, so we're able to just kind of quick and dirty dress things off and on because her body, didn't really alter very much over time. So yeah, just some of the interesting designers and pieces that we have in the collection, and it's really just a small sampling.
I mean, my God, this is just an amazing array of the 70s and 80s in some ways. It's like the blast one in the bottom is like, oh, that just screams the 80s. It's really kind of wonderful, the black and white one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that Kenzo one from 1980 is just
I love it.
it's I love it. It's sort of camp in its own way. It's just kind of magic in a way. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's just wow. And the Yves Saint Laurent in the gown in the far bottom corner, that's just wonderful. That print is so enormous. It's like it's fantastic. It's so wonderful. It's like I walked down memory lane.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Those are the kind of things that I grew up, looking at in fashion magazines in the 1980s. So if you like, ruffles, bubble skirts, enormous bows, excessive lace, etc., we've got all that for you. We've got a pretty
Polka
great
dot. The polka
80s,
dot.
80s, early 90s collection. So we're, like I said, very fortunate that she shared some of her wardrobe pieces with us. Kind of unusual during the end of for the end of her life, she really was wearing a lot of Prada and stuff. She has Prada and Marni. She has younger daughters. So for the long time, we were just thinking like, well, maybe, you know what I mean? They were so different from everything else that maybe maybe these are actually being worn by her daughter or something. But then I was looking on Getty Images, and there was a little, almost like a Prada slip dress with some beading that was very youthful, kind of ingenue. But there she was pictured at an event, but she had a cashmere cardigan over it. So just kind of interesting to see how she kind of negotiated and dealt with her wardrobe over time. So there's a project in there for sure that we haven't done yet.
Yeah, it's amazing. Really, really wonderful.
Can I show you another slide?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, all the slides.
Okay. So like I said, we don't have an exhibition space. So this is like a little mini Ambas, kind of just talking about how she's influenced our collections. That was at the university. There's a special place on campus called University Collections, which is a new building with 8 small galleries that offers different groups on campus and opportunities to exhibit things from their collections. And so this was just a little small look at pieces that she has donated over time. So it's a left to right, it's a Giorgio de Sant'Angelo, an Ungaro, a Wagner ski ensemble, Prada jacket, and the last 2 are Chanel. So I think when we thought about this, it was heavy Barbie time, so we were all focused on pink.
Hello, Barbie. I have a question about,
Yeah.
I think it's the Ungaro.
Uh-huh.
So is that ruching over the hip? What's going on with that
Yeah,
sort of wrapper on the hip and kind of over the one bust?
exactly. It's a whole bunch of fabric, gathered, gathered and then hand stitched. So that was I mean, definitely a prominent 80s fashion, detail, and something that she, from evidence in our collection, something that she loved.
Yeah, this is amazing. Awesome.
So, to talk about, this is something that I curated that is now currently on view at our local history center. It's called Illustrating Identities, Senior Chords in Monroe County. And do you know about this tradition, Leon?
No, I don't. What are senior chords?
So senior chords were an Indiana only phenomenon that supposedly started at Purdue in 1904. Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. So their colors are gold and black. And some students, male students, were passing by a shop window. They saw a bolt of gold corduroy fabric in a window. Thought they would have pants made up in the fabric, and boy, it only took about 10 years or so before I think people started maybe putting signatures on them and a little bit of minimal decoration. And it really grew into this statewide phenomenon, and trickled down to the high school level where they really experienced kind of their fullest expression. So we have, you can't really see it very well, but the title panel here, the senior chords with the IU sweater, they're from 1926, and they have India ink signatures of the wearer's friends, along with, and in the upper right thigh, the seal of Indiana. So someone replicated
Oh, wow.
seal.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And if anyone follows Emily Bodie and her company, Bodie, she's won the CFDA award for menswear a couple of, 2018 or so. She started doing her own version of senior chords. So the senior chords ended up being decorated with signs and symbols of one's senior status, and then, clubs, activities, sports, in-jokes, relationships, contemporary events. And they're really just, I think, amazing documents that just take you right back to a certain place and time. I think they're really incredible. I think we probably have the largest group of senior chords. We have probably almost 75 of them, ranging from 1926 to about 1982. But they really like I said, they really flourished at the high school level. They were never as popular at IU as they were at Purdue. Purdue, they really are a great, they were a great tradition for a long time that were, they had parades and special events, and they wore them with bowler hats and canes. IU was never that into them, but high schools all over Indiana adopted the practice, and it really died out in the late '60s, early '70s, but not everywhere. There was a time of great social upheaval. Students weren't really interested in doing things that their parents had done, as well as there was a lot of school consolidation in Indiana. So a lot of the smaller schools were absorbed into larger schools, and the kind of school pride for them, really wasn't quite the same. As well as some schools, as teenagers will do, there was a lot of obscene and vulgar and off-color motifs and sayings, especially on the crotch and the rear. So in some schools, they ended up being banned. Those, of course, are the most fun ones. Are the most fun ones.
Indeed.
So we started a couple years ago. I purchased the jacket from Bodie, and then they threw in the pants because we saw, Harry Styles wearing these. Leon Bridges was pictured wearing these. Jeff Goldblum has shown off his senior cords on Instagram, and so there seemed to be a bit of a revival, especially with Harry Styles in vogue. Of it, and doing some ongoing research because they're just like my absolute favorite part of the collection.
Has the tradition revived itself more recently with these social media posts?
Well, there's a school in kind of north of Indianapolis, Noblesville High School. It's like a suburb of Indianapolis, and they still do them on white jeans. They're very much the same. And then, I will hear from other people once in a while that they say they will do it at their schools. But I think that's the only school where it may have been fairly continuous, or the revival has been quite strong.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but it's just, and of course, most of the wares are, rapidly. A lot of them are no longer with us. But it's so wonderful to talk to the people who wore them and get all their stories. And it is like it's like breaking a code puzzle. Some things are pretty obvious. Other things, motifs and symbols, it's takes a lot of research, or I don't know, or remain unknown. A lot of in
Remain
jokes
unknown.
that,
I mean,
yeah.
especially, yeah, the personal in jokes or the personal, connective things that you'll never ever know. It's just known between those two or three people. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And so this exhibit is focused on the one on senior courts from Monroe County. So we have, I think maybe there's about 19 in the whole. It's a small exhibit, but I combined them with some of the ones in our local history center because they, of course, collect ones from Monroe County as well. But anyways, just a really super fun subject that is near and dear to my heart.
Really fantastic.
Thanks. So then I also wanted to talk about, people always want to know about the Glenn Close costume collection. Came to IU in, God, I almost said 2017. Um, and it consists of over 800 pieces, individual pieces, and that represents approximately 200 costumes. But that's really, some costumes are very complete with head to toe everything, and other just partial, just one part of things. So it's very,
Yeah.
people are always wanting numbers, and it's very hard to kind of quantify this collection. There are pieces that were worn in a production a couple of times with different things, so it's kind of hard to do that
Yeah.
numbers. So there are more than 40 productions represented, and the genres of theater, film, and television are all present in the collection. It is by no means represents all of her, everything that she's ever done. She's done many more. Um, uh, she's had many more roles than that, and can't really speak to why, and why we only have a few things. I know that she did keep some things behind. She had a contract written into her, a clause written into her contracts that she got to keep costumes. Early on, when she was starting out, she particularly cites The World According to Garp, and that's kind of the beginning of the collection, that she was so taken by the nurse's uniform that was created for her, designed for her by Anne Roth and made at Barbara Matera, that she, just couldn't believe the time and effort, the skill, and the effort that was put into what was essentially a pedestrian kind of World War II nurse's uniform. So she was sort of hooked from then, and always says that she is not dressed until she is in that costume. So it does span from 82 to about 2020. The last production being represented was her work in Hillbilly Elegy. I've kind of asked for some other haven't gotten other role things. I think it's different. She doesn't have a place to collect, if that makes sense now. She doesn't.
Yeah.
So anyways, well, I'm not sure how much we will still get. What we have is pretty wonderful. If we got more, it wouldn't be a bad thing. And it's really, kind of anomalous. So I am not a theater person, so this was a huge learning curve, but so fascinating to see, especially the things that are made for stage and for how different they are than, the off the rack costumes are the bulk of our collection, really.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. I mean, the construction of things for stage, especially, and sometimes film, depending on how long they need to run and what they need to do, there's a very different kind of construction technique than some of the things that are off the rack or even couture. So we borrow from a lot. And Glenn Close is one of those performers that is a friend of costumers and a friend of costumes. So she has spoken out many times about how she loves it and how she feels dressed when she is actually, and in character when she is actually fully dressed. So, and it's absolutely not surprising that you might have duplicates or not duplicates, but you're like, oh, there's this piece from this one, because it would be repeated. So unlike, fashion, when we're talking about that, costumes get used and recut in different ways or reshaped in different ways for different period films or different films in general. So this is really exciting.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate because this is not the normal, end stop for costumes, right? They do get cut, reused, remade into things for other productions. So it's really great that we are able to have these pieces as well, especially things like theater, when sometimes there's no record, you know what I mean? There might be a couple of approved photos and some maybe kind of pretty bad video, but sometimes
Right.
this is something tangible from that production that still exists, which is really cool.
Yeah,
And
there
just the
might be a
first
label
time.
left. Yeah, there might be a label left in the costume that says so and so, or list. There may be a Barbara Matera label left in, which Barbara Matera is one of the most well-known costume shops in New York City.
Yeah, things are really pretty incredible. But just the first time we had pieces from Sunset Boulevard and saw one of the costumes with, great big Velcro in the back and things like that for a quick change. I'm like, oh, I'm dealing with something totally different. That is not,
Oh.
not in my wheelhouse. So it's been a really fun learning experience, uh,
Yeah.
for sure. Let's see. So yeah, it's a really great. And what's really interesting is it also came with some personal wardrobe pieces,
Oh,
which is
cool.
kind of great. So that really ties the our existing collection to this collection. So some of the same designers, etc., are represented, which is really kind of fun. And I have some images here. So we are really lucky this year. We did receive the Erdem gown that Glenn. This is something she did send us. The Erdem gown and cape that she wore for last year's Met Gala. If you remember her with that enormous cape
Fantastic.
on the runway, yeah, it's really quite amazing. And gosh, yeah, that cape is like in a 60 by 12, 60, 60-inch by 12-inch by 18-inch box, and it still could have more. It could have more space. So it's pretty incredible. So we were really excited to get that. And as well, we also received the 2019 West Gordon for Carolina Herrera dress that Glenn wore when she was nominated for the wife in 2019. That's also an extraordinary gown, weighs about 47, 48 pounds. It's, kudos to her. It's like, she's a perfect person to wear it, right? Probably
Yeah.
nothing to her. But it's, not easy to dress or move around. But it's incredible dress.
It's all about the red carpet. It is all about the red carpet.
Yeah, it is. And one thing that I people always ask, so we're not opening our collection to more, you know what I mean? This is a very discreet collection. Really nothing like it except for maybe the Robert De Niro collection at the Harry Ransom Center at UT Austin. So they have all of his costumes and scripts, etc. So it's a
Yeah.
pretty cool thing. And in 2021, I, along with Galena Olmsted, who is then at the Eskenazi Museum of Art. There's a Eskenazi Museum, Eskenazi School, not affiliated, but both funded by the same generous donors. So we, received this in 2017, and people immediately wanted to see it. So we thought, let's go. And of course, COVID hit. There's nothing like putting together a big exhibit during COVID. So we showed about 54 pieces from, ranging across from Garp up into, we didn't show anything from the wife, but we showed that gown, the gown that she wore to the Oscars in the exhibition. And it was a great success. I think broke all the museum attendance records to date during COVID, which I think is kind of an accomplishment. But yeah, so of course some of the most beloved pieces and spectacular pieces are the Anthony Powell designed 101 and 102 Dalmatians pieces. What you're seeing here are costumes from 102 Dalmatians. And this is kind of my favorite little vignette with all the black and the white.
It's really fantastic. It's great.
Yeah, and I think the one of my favorites is I don't know if it's very Givenchy kind of striped prison uniform on the left, which is made out of the most delicious heavy linen and velveteen, and it is just so it's outstanding. It's so gorgeous and silly, and it goes with those gold Chanel style handcuffs and shackles. So
I know
really
it's
fun.
and I love the cape in the background.
Yeah.
The cape and it's just fantastic.
Yeah. It was a kind of still not sure how we pulled it all off, but I think it was a wonderful exhibit.
It was an
Um,
accomplishment.
yeah. And there's another view of some of the 101 Dalmatians costumes, and of course, Glenn's costume from Guardians of the Galaxy there on the left. And in the background, you're seeing a few pieces from if anyone remembers the series of made for television movies based on the Sarah Plain and Tall books.
Oh,
Actually really beautiful, really gorgeous costumes, early 20th century, also made at Barbara Matera. Very different than Dalmatians, but some of the, most lovely wools and linens, and really just great fabrics. And in you can see the back view of the beach dress that she wore in Albert Nobbs. And
oh
then,
yeah.
and then next to the python dress from 101 Dalmatians is the iconic, facing out from us, iconic black leather coat from Fatal Attraction.
Yes.
Just another view. So here's that in the
No, no.
middle is that nurse's uniform from The World According to Garp that, she kind of credits for sparking her whole infatuation with costume. And I didn't realize it, but you're right. You go back and look at, like archival video footage of her doing interviews and stuff early on. And she's talked about the importance of costume to her character development from like day one. So it's really kind of amazing. And yeah,
Yeah.
we're very fortunate to have this really incredible
Yeah, these are
collection here.
beautiful and really wonderful. What is the like corset or straitjackety thing on the form there?
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece. So this was it's barely revealed, I think, at the end of Albert Nobbs. And it is like the corset that she kind of cobbled together for herself to flatten her chest. And it's
Hmm.
like the straps are old suspenders. So you get the sense that it really, you know what I mean, that she didn't have any, the means to do anything different, and so she got something and put it together. Yeah, because if you didn't see the film, she's a woman in early 20th century in Dublin, and she's orphaned. And to economically support herself, she takes a job at an inn as sort of a butler waiter, and so she dresses as a man
Yes.
for most of her life. And so that's what's represented here on the left. And then at one scene, she goes with a friend who has a partner who's a dressmaker, and she's in a dress again and kind of allowed to be herself and gets to dance out, kind of run around on the beach in a dress once more. So yeah, so that's just a really interesting piece that was cobbled together as the undergarment that she kind of put together for herself to create the look and to pass as a man, so she could work and support
Yeah.
herself in the way that she needed to be. And I just wanted to say, it's not just me at the Sage Collection. I have to give a shout out to Emily Rusolowski. This was during oh gosh, it was probably the summer of 2019 or 2020 when we were photographing for the exhibition catalog. So Emily is putting some polishing touches on a costume from The Lion in Winter, which is a television production. And that was costumed by Consolata Boyle. And having a total brand, I can't remember what year it's from, but it's a really interesting costume because it is just matte square kind of gunmetal sequence with some kind of a spray, like a splattery paint effect, and you get up close and it's obvious what it is, but it reads as like chainmail on screen, and it's really super cool. It's a really great costume. But Emily is our part-time collections assistant here and does an excellent job. And so I don't know, she's probably going to kill me when she sees that photo in here, but got to give a shout out to her. She works really hard
That's
for
a
us.
Thanks, Emily. And that's an amazing costume. And that's part of it, as part of the costume world when you're dealing with either film or theater. It's like, how do you make this look like it's supposed to in that way? So that way you get the effect that you're looking for. So sometimes there's illusion going on that
Uh,
we have to deal with.
yeah, I love it, and don't ever discount the appeal for people to want to be next to something that they've seen on screen, right? Or on stage. I mean, it's
Totally.
very, very powerful. And we were lucky enough that even though it was COVID, Glenn did make it out to the exhibit, and that was really great. So we didn't think it was going to happen because she kept having, there was early COVID. So anytime she went
Yeah.
anywhere, there'd be like a 2-week quarantine, and she works constantly and really hard. And so we finally could get to visit in, and that was really awesome. One thing I was really excited about this exhibit project, which is probably the biggest that I worked on, it's just me and Emily. And so to pull something off, we were able to pull a lot of students in. So some of our fashion design students, fashion studies students, etc. And so this is just, we're all squatted in the upstairs giant conference room at the museum for a couple months, and dressing pieces. And so it was just really a great opportunity to get some young hands uh, not so dirty, but dirty into the process of working on exhibitions. Sure, this is along the same lines. We had just talking about a fun mounting problem. There were these great gloves that went with a python, the python dress, and they're made for soft, flexible human hands, not mannequin hands. So we couldn't get them on without damaging the gloves. So we had a graduate graphic design student um, scan the gloves, and she boy worked forever on getting the color and the contrast and the scale correct, and then digitally printed out the pattern for another student, worked on converting the file and digitally printed it on some knit. And actually our own Deb Christensen in our fashion design area made the gloves up, did the patterning and stitched them up. And then, those are our CVS press on nails that we glued onto the end. So it was a really fun exercise in bringing a lot of campus resources together, and students being able to learn from this process is really super cool.
So thank you so much, Kelly. This is amazing, and it's great to see
Sure.
these rooms and all the other wonderful things that you have. And I will be talking with you about doing some research in your collection coming up. Can you tell us more about the forms or mannequins you use while having garments that are a variety of sizes?
Yeah, we have all kinds. I mean, all different things. So we have a range of dress forms that are sized by bust. So, gosh, we have from like a 28 up to, we have some Ella Fitzgerald pieces that are about probably a 41, 44 bust forms. That fit her, so we're not having to, you know what I mean? We can start off a little bit closer to where we need to be, rather than trying to, pad out a big form from a size 32 or so. So we use a lot of dress forms. The big mannequins in the Glenn Close exhibition were some of the sloppy mannequins. Yeah, and we just use different, we have I feel like every, basement full of bodies, like I said, with the big sloppy mannequins, dress forms. We have some more kind of, plasticky retail mannequins that we use for that senior chords exhibition that I showed.
Mhm, mhm.
Contemporary male mannequins are too well endowed. So we had to do some surgery to get, it's so interesting. Those mannequins, the shape changes so, so much what's in fashion, and then the contemporary male mannequins they're just too much for more slender 50s and 60s men. So just I'd say we probably try to get most neutral mannequins, because it's easy to alter the shape, but the pose is difficult. There's a difficult thing to change. You can't really change it.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. Well, and the same is true of dress forms. I mean, dress
Yes.
forms,
Yep.
dressmaker forms are, depending on the time in which they're manufactured, will be manufactured for that time. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
depending on what you're draping or making, it'll do that as well. So that's amazing.
Sure. So of course,
Oh,
one of
lovely.
people's favorite costume movies is Dangerous Liaisons from 1988. And, big cast, lots of costumes. So we have just a few from it. So we have the blue and pink dress, the yellow sort of traveling ensemble, the panniers that were worn both actually underneath the piece, which is what in the middle, in the middle, and then the ones that were seen on screen in the dressing scenes in the beginning of the film. We've got a few other pieces, so I think a lot of those are scattered all around. I have no idea what happened
Yeah.
to those. In fact, gosh, I think it's about a year ago that Madonna's costumer or somebody associated with her contacted us looking for the one costume. Remember that Madonna wore to the VMA Awards, I think. She was doing Vogue, and so like I have no idea. We do have we have the white dress that she wore at the very end at the opera, at the end of the film, but it is a little bit in rougher shape than these. But it's not the one they were seeking out, the Madonna wore.
Right.
So And yeah, so these are really beautiful. They're so fun, beautiful pieces. I grew up in the West because I feel like I'm definitely sort of a 20th century person. So we have very few 18th century things in our collection, maybe 5 pieces. So even this like fake 18th century stuff is really fun.
I know, it's really fun. The pockets on that yellow one are really funny. The sort of reverse of them, really
Oh yeah,
amazing. It's a great.
yeah, they're really fun. It's such
So
a good highlight to have that black on there.
yeah, exactly. So Kelly, we've come to the end of our time, and what a perfect thing to end on. Dangerous Liaisons. I mean, how gorgeous and fantastic. I still use that film when I teach costume history because the dressing scenes are so wonderful.
Oh
So.
yeah, they are.
Um, Thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing, and it's been great to see what you have in the collection and the Glenn Close things. I haven't seen some of those things since I saw them on film years ago, so it's really lovely to see it. And it's just really delightful. And the chords, I had no idea. That's an amazing thing, senior chords. So thank you so much, Kelly. It's just been a pleasure to have you here. And thank you, everyone, for coming today. Please thank our guest for her time and the effort. And thank you all for attending. Please follow the Costume Society of America on Facebook and Instagram to make sure that you hear about our upcoming episodes in our Conversations on Dress series. And of course, follow us on YouTube. Lastly, if you enjoyed today's content, we implore you to make a small or rather large donation to help keep the content free for all.